So the first portion of this session, I'm going to talk about basic navigation. So this may be redundant for some of you, but we want to make sure everybody is comfortable with navigating Blackboard first, and then we'll get into building the course content. So if you're on the BridgeNet homepage, you'll notice under quick links, there is a link there for Blackboard. If you're on the student portal, there's a link there for Blackboard as well. Or if you want to just bookmark it, it's just bridgew.blackboard.com. All right, so we are just looking at the Blackboard homepage. And when you first log in, you'll notice that it's going to default to the Courses tab. And this is because it's going to be what we use most often. You'll notice the most recent term is going to be up the top unless you've marked some items as favorites, and those would go up to the top if you selected them as favorites, you'll see. I'm going to go through some of the items on the left here. Then I'm going to go into your course and give you some navigation there as well. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through everything on the left, just so we can cover all the most critical items. So the first one, institution page, is just a default page that has some helpful links. So if you ever need a Blackboard help, Zoom help, Web for Faculty info, etc., there are links out here. You just go to the institution page. The second item on the left nav is my name, and that would be your name, obviously. This is just your basic demographic information, but on the right-hand side, you'll notice global notification settings. This is helpful if you want to make sure you get email notifications when there's new gradable items. Stream notifications references this activity stream, and then push notifications is referring to if you use the mobile app. So I'm going to click on email notifications, and this is where you can determine what you want to be notified about and how frequently. So if you want to make sure you get a notification about gradable items or maybe new messages, etc., select what you want notifications about and then determine how often, and then just click save. So this is helpful for you to know, but also for you to be able to let your students know. So some students do in fact use their email and they might want to get that. That's something they can determine what they want to see and what they don't. The next tab down is the activity stream. So this is just all those notifications I showed you. You can go through, you'll see which courses have updates and so forth. It's just a nice timeline. So for those who use social media, it's sort of like that for Blackboard. The next tab is courses. I'll jump back to that one. Organizations, you don't need to worry about. Calendar is a calendar of all the courses. So if a student or you wanted to look at maybe the due dates in all of your upcoming courses, you could come through, and any gradable item that has a due date set would show up here. You can also change this view to look at monthly view, or you can navigate through the days as well. So it's a good high-level reminder of when things are due if you're using the due dates. Messages, the same thing. This is messages for all courses, not just for an individual course, but you'll be able to see which ones have messages in them from this view. And then you could access that as well. Grades, this is again where primarily students would use it, but you could see if you've got work that needs to be graded, you could see that here as well. And I'm going to skip some of the other items here and just go right into courses. And before I go into an actual course, I want to show you a couple of options here as far as filters and so forth. So to help you find your courses. As I mentioned, the most recent term is going to be at the top, and you can scroll down, you're going to see your previous terms. If you're trying to find an old course because you wanted some documentation from it or whatever, you can also search by the course name. You can filter by term here. And you can also filter if you're teaching, but maybe you've also taken some courses and so forth. You can filter by those as well. You'll notice it only shows me 25 items per page, but I have 31. So I may not be seeing all of the courses. I may want to change that to see if there's more. And you'll see here on the left, there's also an option of how I want to view my course. I believe the default is this list view. And then this is the course grid, which I call it the tile view, but I like this visually for me, but whatever you prefer, you can choose however you want that. Now, whichever one you do, you'll notice there's a little star icon. So if I wanted to mark things as favorites, I tend to just put my most recent courses on my favorites. But if you're not using all of your course shells, maybe you just want to use the ones you're using for the term, you can mark them as favorites. And then at the end of the term, you would just click the star again to remove that favorite. So that way you don't have to scroll through all of your courses. All right. I just wanted to double check if there were any messages in the meantime of questions, but feel free to interrupt, Eric, if you notice any questions as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I've just created a blank empty course site. And you'll see before I go in right now, you'll see this little lock and it's showing me that the course is closed. So all of the course shells are automatically created for you when you're assigned to a course. And this is done usually a couple months before the start of the term. By default, those are all going to be locked or closed. And the day before the start of the semester, Tim or our department will make those courses automatically open for you. So you don't have to manually open them. I know there are some faculty that would prefer to open it earlier so students can get access to the course syllabi, etc. So that is something you do have control over. I just wanted to let you know that you don't have to. That is something we do for you to help as well. So if I wanted to make that available, or excuse me, make that open, I can do that here under course settings, or I can do it inside the course as well. The reason I want to show you this is if you say hide course, this is going to hide the course from you, not from your students. And so we have this problem often where people say that they lost access to their course or their course disappeared or what have you. This is because they accidentally chose hide course. And it's understandable because the terminology can be confusing, but you're hiding it from your own menu. You're not hiding it from students. So students would see the name of a course if it's closed, but they would not be able to get into it. So you don't have to hide it. But if I were to hide it, you'll see it's no longer there and it's no longer in my spring courses. The way that I can get that back is if I come into my filter and I say, show me the ones that are hidden from me. So then I can come in and I go to the ellipses and I say, show the course. So I want to point that out because we do have, very frequently we have that happen to folks. So I just want to show you how you get it back if you accidentally hide it from yourself. So I'm going to go ahead into the course and start with some of the basic navigation inside the course now. And so I have created a blank course because this is what you usually start with. And I'll go through the basic menus across the top, the menus on the right, as well as the course settings. And then I'll go through adding your content within the course content area. And I will point out how to copy content as well, because oftentimes you're going to be teaching the same course semester after semester. So there is no reason to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. So you can copy the entire course, or you can do more of an a la carte process and just pick and choose the content that you want from the previous terms. So first is the content tab. This is where the bulk, the meat and potatoes of your course is, so to speak. This is where all the student content would live and be visible to your students. So we'll want to kind of click on the tabs to navigate through. The calendar is if you have gradable items, those would automatically show up in the due dates when you add a due date to them. This course is empty, so there's nothing there yet. I point this out because you could also manually add items to your calendar if you choose. Let's say your course is primarily in person, but you do have submissions online. Maybe you want to add a class presentation that you're not going to be grading in Blackboard, but you want to remind them about it. You could come out here, you can just click this plus sign and you can add an event, and then it will show on the calendar for your students. There are other options too. You could always put a grade column in for items that aren't being turned on online, and Tim can show you that in the later session as well. Course announcements, that's an important one. So if you wanted to send out an announcement to your class, you would come out here. Right now you see a button that says create announcement. Once you have announcements, that won't be there. So I want to point out on the upper right corner, this little circle and plus sign. This is sort of a universal sign for adding new things. So when we're adding content, you're going to use that same symbol, adding announcements, messages, and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and just click that, and you'll see I can put a title for my announcement. And then it'll automatically choose all course members. And then I would just type whatever message I want. I can format it using this toolbar. I can also add content if I want to put pictures, etc. And then down below, you can see I can also check the box to send an email copy to recipients. And I can schedule this for later if I prefer. So knowing that my course is currently not available, I maybe don't want to send it right now, but perhaps I want to send it out on Tuesday once the course sites are available. So I'm going to just set this maybe for the afternoon on Tuesday. That would be morning. And then if you wanted to hide an announcement, you could. I don't typically do that, but if you're going to be somebody that sends them often, maybe you just want to have, the most recent few announcements, you could certainly do that. Keep in mind when you do set due dates and you set announcement dates, if you are going to copy this course later, you'll have to update those dates later, of course. So obviously you have to have some content, and then you would be able to click post or save draft. If I save my draft, you'll see it says scheduled draft, but I haven't posted it yet. I could always come back and click post later. Go in and edit. I can also go copy. So now I'm going to click post, and now it's actually scheduled. So if I save it as a draft, it's not going to go out. I have to click post for that to go out at that time. And again, I mentioned you can always delete if you change your mind, so you can copy it if you want to tweak it, and edit and so forth. So that's your announcements. And I believe once you have multiple, there is a way to reorganize those as well. Discussions, we can actually build the discussions from our content area. So if you are going to have a weekly discussion, I'll show you how you can add that inside a weekly module. But if you wanted to guide your students to come to the discussions tab to participate, you could add that here as well. You would just click new discussion and create the topic and so forth here. Gradebook, Tim's going to cover later, but this is where you would come in. Basic navigation, I just wanted to point out we have this toolbar, but there's also a toolbar here. So if you're looking for a particular view and you're not seeing it, you may have to click through the different views. And you'll notice as we go through the various topics today, that's very helpful. Messages, if you wanted to send messages directly to specific students or groups of students, this is where you'd want to do that, whereas announcements will go to everyone. So perhaps you've got a couple of students that are falling behind or haven't submitted items, you could reach out to them directly. You would just click new message. And similar to that announcement, the one thing that I find a little silly is you can't put a subject line, but you can select who you wanted to message. You can say all students. I don't know why it's showing this SOS thing, but this is everyone in the course, all instructors, all students, and then you can pick and choose. So if I were to pick one person, you'll see their name is right here. And then I would, if I want to allow them to respond, there's my message, and then I would click send. And so now here's my conversation with Tim. If he were to respond, I would see that down below. So I'd have that conversation thread right inside of Blackboard. And what's nice about that is rather than email going outside, there's no way to confirm that they got it via, if they're not checking Bridgewater email and so forth, this lives inside the course. So that's very helpful. I'm not going to go into it, but there are some analytics and you can create groups. So if you're creating assignments or discussions and so forth, those could be assigned on the group level. The next menu I want to point out is this course settings menu. This is brand new. They made these changes actually last week, I believe. So up in the upper right corner, this is very different. Right now, it's very clear that my course is closed. And if I hover, it says students cannot access this course. So I think they're trying to clarify with the unavailable, available, they're using different terminology. So this is an adjustment for us. We have to get used to. I'll probably keep saying available and unavailable for a while, but this is what it says now. If I want to change that, I would just click on the course settings, and then I would come down and I would just check, toggle this so that it is now available to the students. And you can see it changes this to open. There are some other things in this settings that you could change. I don't suggest doing so. Course duration, I recommend leaving this as ongoing. If you change it, it's going to disappear from you on your courses menu at a certain date. So I don't suggest you do that, and so forth. There's other options here as well, but I'm just going to leave that alone for now. And now the course is open. Students could access, they could see the messages and so forth, announcements that I've done. So I'm going to go over to the content area, and then there's one more set of tools I want to show you, and we'll get into adding actual content. So that is under the details and actions menu. And those who haven't used Ultra too often, this used to be on the left and they moved it over to the right. Eric, I'll take a quick break after this section and we could ask the question on microphone if you'd like.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. So the first thing I want to show you is the class roster. This is where you can view everyone that's enrolled in the course. And the reason I want to show you this is you can reach their contact information by going to the ellipses, but you can also go in and do some accommodations. So if you have a student who needs accommodations, you've got a letter from Student Accessibility Services, perhaps they need extended time, or etc. If I come in and I select accommodations, you'll see I have a due date accommodation as well as a time limit accommodation. If I choose the due date accommodation, this basically just means it's not going to show that it's late. So a lot of times, perhaps you've got a student who has anxiety about, things being in red or what have you. You'll be able to check that box. Time limit accommodation is where you would be able to go in and a gradable item that has a timer. This would give them extra time. So if you've got a quiz or a test that they've got 30 minutes or 90 minutes or what have you, you would come in, you would set however much extra time that they're allotted and then click save. And this will add it if there were any assignments I had already built as well. What's great about setting the accommodations at the roster is that this will now automatically apply to all gradable items. In Blackboard Original, we used to have to set that on every single assignment or every single assessment. So this is nice because it's going to automatically apply it. You see this little purple flag next to the student's name. When I look at that student in the gradebook, I'll also have that indicator there. So it'll be a reminder for me that that student does have an accommodation. So, and then if I wanted to see the student's contact information, I would just come into member information and I can look at the pronunciation of their name. And in this case, Eric has a audio as well, but I could come through, I could look at their account information and so forth. So if they've added any of this information, such as their pronouns, I could see that here as well. So that's the roster. Progress tracking is automatically on, and we do recommend you leave it that way. I'll demonstrate as we build content why that's useful. Course image, if you wanted to add a nice image across the top of your page, that's where you would do so. If you're going to use the attendance functionality inside Blackboard, this is where you would mark your attendance. You would come in. As soon as you click that, it's going to automatically bring up that day and you can determine, who was here, who wasn't here. One tip is if you wanted to, if most people are here, if you click present, you can say mark all present. And then I could just change one or two people instead. So maybe that Eric was late. Actually, Eric was the only one that was here early. But in this case, just to demonstrate, this is how I would set that. This is the individual meeting. There's also a button here for overall. So if you wanted to add a session, maybe you forgot to take attendance last week, I could come in and I could choose the date that I wanted to set the attendance for and mark that attendance as well. There's not a lot we can do as far as the grades. I don't know why this is funky looking, but I can set this to be 100% for present. This could be 50% for late. We don't have a lot of choices here as far as how we use this. So if you don't like the functionality that Blackboard has, you can certainly create your own column for attendance. You don't have to use Blackboard settings. But I wanted to point that out. If you do want to use attendance, that is here under the details and actions. If you're using any third-party tools, LTI tools and so forth, you're going to find those under books and tools. If you're building tests from question banks, that's going to be here. And I'm not going to talk about Teams because we have Zoom as well. So those are your options here on the details and actions menu. Now, before I start on the actual course content, I want to take a pause. And I know, was it Linda that had a question? Feel free to unmute yourself, Linda.
Hi, Stacy. Thanks.
Sure.
So I had a question regarding using messages or using email. I know when I use email, I'll always have a history of my emails to the student and the student's emails back to me. But with messages, I'm not sure how that works and if I don't know if it's harder to keep track of the correspondence with the students when using messages. So I just wanted to know if there's what the advantages or disadvantages are of using messages.
Sure. So with Ultra, it's a little bit nicer with messages because it keeps that archive right inside the course. Whereas in Original, when you used to do send email, there was no copy of the message retained inside the course. And so We used to recommend people just email directly from Outlook instead of using that send email from inside of Blackboard. If you prefer to send email and you keep those archives, that's perfectly fine. Messages is just replacing the old send email functionality of the old system. But what's nice about it is it's keeping that archive here so you could have documentation of it. And what's nice is, we have that course retention policy so that information lives on if there was ever a concern or something that had to be brought up. But Eric and Tim, I know you both teach, and I was going to ask your input, or let's go with Eric since Tim is echoey. What's your thoughts on that?
I, gosh, I use both. I do a lot with messages with students, for like those one-on-one conversations. Um, the announcements are cool because like, yeah, when as soon as you come into that course, right, they see it right away. Like they can't miss it.
Mm-hmm.
I end up doing messages, and if I use messages, I always end up checking off that box for email as well. I'm trying to cover like all my bases.
Okay. Do
Um,
students prefer messages, or how do the students
It
feel about it?
varies. It varies. I know I've told students like email is my preferred communication method, and they'll still send me a Blackboard
Messages?
message.
Yeah.
But at least when I go into my Blackboard course site, you'll see up top there where the messages tab is that basically there'll be like a number that
Yeah,
appears.
it'll have like a
It'll be
one or a two.
yeah, and basically letting you know there's like 3 new messages for you. Um,
And when you respond, you're responding directly to that individual message. You're not like, you don't need to like type in addresses.
no,
Yeah,
no.
okay. Okay, yeah, so it goes directly to the student who, you're responding directly to the student who messaged you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, so there's pros and cons of both, but the nice thing is that now with the messages in Ultra, there is a copy retained inside of the course, whereas the old system, you might send an email from Blackboard, but there was no history kept, and so that was problematic at times, unless you had copied yourself on it.
Okay, great. That answers my question. Thank you.
Great.
I'll,
All
I'll
right,
just
so I'm gonna,
uh,
oh, sorry.
Stacy, I'll just add real quick too, like in terms of my preferences for when I use announcements versus messages, if something is like uh, a really important reminder, let's say about an upcoming assignment that's due, presentation, something that really needs their attention right away, um, then I'll use announcements for that. If it's just like a follow-up reminder about something, um, or hey, here's a resource I came across that might be of interest to you, but it's not required. That's when I'd probably use messages.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right, I'm going to dive into the actual creating course content portion of this session. And so when you first come into a course, you'll notice it's empty. And so you have this add content item button, and you also have this auto generate modules button. Once you've added some content, those buttons aren't there anymore. So it's important that you know that you can add content in a different way. So I could also come to this ellipses and I can copy items. So as I mentioned earlier, if I had a previous course that I wanted to copy in, copying is a little bit different in Ultra in that we start in the empty course and we go pull from what we want to copy. Instead of in original, we used to go into the old course and push. So I'll just demonstrate this. I'm not going to go ahead and copy, but I'll show you the steps. So here I've clicked copy. Now I can navigate and find my old course that I wanted to copy. If I wanted to, I could select the entire course, and it's as simple as literally just clicking start copy and it will copy everything. Much simpler process than it was in original. I can also uncheck and go in and drill down and pick and choose specific things. So maybe I just want to go into this content folder and I want to just do this welcome message because maybe it's a totally different class, but I have my video or what have you. Let's say I want to just copy that one thing. I'll go ahead and demonstrate just that one item. And you'll see it's indicating that it's copying it down here. And here's my welcome to the course module. It tells me what's in here. And when I copy granularly, so I pick and choose, everything I copy in comes in as hidden. When I copy the entire course, it actually retains that visibility. So if I've got some items hidden, some items visible, when I copy the full course, it will retain that. But if I pick and choose, it will automatically bring it in as hidden. And the reason for that is there's an assumption you're going to want to go through and update the content before you make it visible to your students. So if I wanted to, I would click this little drop down or click anywhere in this module, and it will expand and show me. This is apparently somebody else's stuff, sorry. But you would expand and you would go in and edit that. I'm going to go ahead and delete. I must have been helping with something in a previous time. So one thing I wanted to point out is this auto-generate modules. What I love about this is it just gives it a nice visual appeal. I know some folks like to organize things by folders. Some folks like to use modules. I'm going to demonstrate modules, but I'll also show you how to create a folder. If you're going to use progress tracking, you do want to stick with the modules because it's just going to work better for you. So what I wanted to show you is I'm going to copy a fake course outline or a weekly. So sometimes people have things weekly, sometimes they have it based on maybe it's chronological and so forth. So I've got some stuff I'm going to copy in. Let's say you've got your weekly modules or whatever, your description in your syllabi. I'm going to come in, I'm just going to paste whatever it is I wanted to. It's going to automatically start using AI to give you some suggestions based on your course title before it even sees what you put in here. You can also select certain items in the course if you wanted to. And then here I can choose the prefix. I'm going to have my modules be weekly. You can have it by topic. You'll see there's other choices there, chapter, unit, etc. I'm going to stick with weekly, and I am going to have it generate some images for me. You're going to be entertained by some of them, particularly if they have hands or text, because AI is not great in that respect. But it's just nice because it gives me a shell. It gives me a place to start. So in this case, I'm just going to have it do 4 weeks. There are some advanced options too if you wanted to change the language, but in my case, I'm not going to use that. And I'm going to go ahead and click generate. And then what it does is this is going to give you some recommendations. You don't have to take the recommendations. You could pick and choose 1 or 2 of them if you'd prefer. You can pick all of them, but then you can go in and change them afterwards as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just select all of them. And you'll see after I select some of them, the little button pops up so I can add them. It's not finished. It's still working on the images right now, but I'm going to go ahead and click add to course. And we'll see what happens. So you'll see I now have some modules. I have a brief description based on, I'm using this document. Let me just show you. So I had a document that had my modules in it, and all I did was copy and paste it when I was creating those modules, and it built them for me. It gives it a nice visual appeal because it's adding images. In this case, it actually looks like it knew how to spell, which is rare. Usually with AI generated images, the spelling is a bit atrocious. These ones are pretty good. So if I decided I wanted to tweak a little bit, I can come out, I can choose edit, and I can still modify this description however I'd like. I could then make this particular module visible if I want. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're going to use progress tracking, I could also set up for sequencing. I'll probably demonstrate that a little bit further later, but if you wanted to ensure students go through the content in a particular order, maybe you want them to do the readings, you want them to watch some videos, answer a discussion before they can do their weekly quiz or something like that. You can force the sequencing and it'll just go in the order that you put the items inside your module. And then I can also modify the image. If I wanted to add a new image, with images, I can upload my own. I can use some stock images that I don't have to worry about copyright because they're copyright friendly, I guess. I don't know what the terminology is. Or I can generate using AI, which is what it did in the first place. So I'm going to keep what I have because it actually spelled it properly for once. And then most cases, I would not mark it as decorative for an image. I want to add alt text to ensure accessibility. So you would give it a nice description of the image. I'm going to do that for now, though, and click save, and any updates that you've put are there. So that is a nice way to automatically create the modules for all of my courses. I do want to show you how to manually add modules, how to manually add folders, and so forth as well. And so once I've got some content, you're going to see this little line when I hover in between sections. And on the line, there's a little circle with a plus sign. This is how I'm going to add content. And what I want to do is I want to put my cursor in the appropriate location. So I want to make sure I put it where I want to add the content so I don't have to drag everything around. You do have the ability to move things, but it's not simple sometimes when you're trying to drag, especially depending on the device, if you're using a touchpad, a mouse, etc. I'm going to click this plus sign, and you're going to see there's a bunch of options here. Auto-generate modules was what I just did. But in this case, I just want to manually create a module. I'm going to create a new learning module, and I'm just going to call this one maybe getting started. So you'll notice at the top, that's where I put the title of my module. I can set my visibility. I can add a description. Whatever it is that's going to be in that module, I'm going to tell them. And then again, if I wanted to add an image, I could do so here. And then I click save. Here's the new module that I just manually created. So this is your basic course structure. Then I can come into the module and add a folder. I can add a document. I can upload files and so forth. And you'll see all I did was click on the module to expand it. And there's this little caret that indicates whether it's opened or closed. You can't always tell, but if you want to add an item inside the module, you want to make sure you click the plus sign inside the module and not down here. This is going to add it to the top level. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and upload a syllabus. And so I just have the syllabus template that was sent out from the TTC last week as an example. And I can decide if I want them to only be able to view the preview online, if I want them to be able to view it and download it, or if I only want them to download it. What's important about this is that preview is actually a PDF. And so it's not always going to be a perfect representation of the file. For example, I was helping somebody yesterday that had a PowerPoint file. You can view the PowerPoint, but the PowerPoint that she was using also had audio narration and it wouldn't work. So in that case, you want to make sure you only choose download only, because that PDF preview isn't going to allow people to interact in the right way. This is just a document, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it as view and download. And so by default, it's hidden from students. I want to make sure that they can see it. And then if I were to click it, you're going to notice I can see a preview of the document eventually. And there also is the ability to download that document. So I can preview it here and I can download it, whatever I prefer. And you see there's 11 pages. It's nice. I can zoom in, I can go through them and so forth. Also, when you add a document, Blackboard has something built in called Blackboard Ally, and this is an accessibility tool. This is helpful to know for all of your students, not just those that you know about a documented disability. And the reason for that is depending on the file format, it's going to give you alternative formats that could be useful. Let's say you've got a student that might be taking the train to campus and maybe they want to download audio, or maybe they'd rather look at it in a web browser on a mobile device. So there's a lot of different options here, and it's always helpful to mention this to your students, even if you don't know if somebody has a documented disability. So that's helpful. And again, that is going to be contextual based on the type of file that you've uploaded. So that's my syllabus. And then perhaps I want to add some contact information. So in this case, I'm going to choose create. And I'm going to choose a document here. This is what's called an ultra document. And what's nice is I can add all sorts of types of content into that single document. So oops, I can't type when I'm on screen, apparently. All right, so I'm going to give it a title, and then here I could add some content. I can add some text. Whoops. But I can also go through the toolbar just like I did before. I could insert content. Perhaps I've got a YouTube video that I wanted to add. I've got an image that I'd like to add. You can add anything you want here. And then I can add additional items. So this one ultra document can have multiple components. So I'm going to come in and maybe I want to convert a file that I have. So I've got a Word document, but I'd like to have it live inside of my ultra course and not be a downloadable document. So I'm going to just choose this faculty contact document that I made earlier today. just for demonstration purposes. And obviously you would put your real contact information here. And then let's say maybe I want to add an image. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to upload a file, I think, profile picture. So I'm going to just do view only for that. So here's an image. I obviously don't want my head to be that ginormous. I'm going to just drag my image so that it ends up being to the right. And can you see that purple bar on the right-hand side? Wherever you see that highlighted is where it's going to put it. So if I move it to the left, it's going to go to the left. If I drag, and you'll see this little, it's like 4 or 6 dots. That's what I click on to move. So if I move it to the right, it's going to move it to the right. And I can also determine how wide I want each section to be. So it really gives me a lot of flexibility in how this looks. I certainly do not want it to be that big. Whee! But you can add videos to the side. You could add whatever you want. So it's a nice visual, gives you a nice visual for the students. And then the other new thing in Ultra that came out, I think in the fall, is something called Knowledge Check. This is not a gradable item, so it's not something that's going to show up in gradebook. It's more of a review question. So perhaps you want students to go through a reading, watch some videos, and before they can move on, you want to make sure that they understand the concept that they're covering in those in that content. You can now build in whatever the question is. Obviously, you would say something more useful than this, but for demonstration purposes, you could put in the options. Put in your feedback and so forth. And then you would click save. And here is that knowledge check question at the end of my Ultra document. When I go ahead and make that visible, and then I'm going to click save. And this is what it looks like. So for a student, it's going to look a little bit different because they're not going to see this knowledge check results. This is something just you will see. And I'll demonstrate how you can look at your content from a student perspective in just a minute. I wanted to make sure I'm covering all the things I wanted to cover in the short amount of time that we have. So I want to go back out to the content level and just point out, right now I've only shown you how to make things visible and how to make things hidden. There's also release conditions. If you wanted to, you could go in and you could adjust when you want students to see things. So I could click date and time, and then I could set a date. So maybe I don't want them to see this until next Wednesday. I could click save. And when I do that and I go back out to my course content, you'll see it shows release conditions, and I could come in and edit it. If I hover over it, it's going to tell me the date and time. One thing to note, if you put release conditions and you copy your course content, you're going to have to make sure you update all of those dates when you copy it into the next semester. So if there's stuff like your syllabus or contact information that you really don't need to hide, less is more as far as giving you, less stuff to have to update later on. So we've talked about adding modules. We've talked about adding documents. Also folders. Perhaps you'd like to, within a week, you want to add some folders. Maybe you're going to have assignments or whatnot inside a folder. Again, I would come in to create, and folder is right here. I could create a folder inside. Obviously, I want to make that visible. I could have a description if I wanted. So this is my folder inside my module. Folders can live inside modules. Modules cannot live inside folders. So just so you understand the hierarchical structure of those. And there's tons of different types of content we can add. I've already pointed out the create menu. This is where you can add folders, documents. You can just add a hyperlink. So if you've got some readings online or videos online you want to just link out to. Embedded cloud documents are useful if you wanted to put your document on OneDrive and it might be something you're going to continually update. That's an option you could use there. We've also got a lot of tools that have an LTI connection, so third-party tools like Padlet or Pull Everywhere, etc. Test assignments, those are going to be covered in the second session, discussions in the second session. AI conversations is great, but we don't have time right now, but that's something you could play around with as well. So that is all the various content types from the create menu. There's also, as I said, copy content, uploading. This other one here is Content Market. So this is also third-party tools. So if you've created maybe a little welcome video using ScreenPal, you could upload that here as well. And these tools are listed alphabetically. So whatever tools it might be that you're using, again, if you have Pull Everywhere or Padlet, etc. So ScreenPal, I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate just for one purpose. I could add this. All I would do now is I would click it and it would link me out to my ScreenPal account. I could click the video that I wanted to embed in my course, and it would put it inside my course. Oh, there we go. And maybe I want to have captions and embed. It's a little tricky because it worked. It doesn't tell me that it worked, but what it did is it opened it in a new tab. So now if I come back, if I click on it, it's going to automatically be there. So some of the third-party tools do that. You're not positive that it worked, but if you come back, you'll see it's there. And so I'm going to go ahead and make that visible to students. And again, you'd obviously have a lot more content prepared when you're building your course site, but in the interest of time, I want to just show you a few other things. So to view your course from a student preview, you'll notice in the upper right corner, there's a link here to click for student preview. What this is doing when I click Start Preview is it's creating a fake student account inside my course. So it's letting me, as the instructor, see what my students see. And it's nice because you can confirm that they can or cannot see the content that you want them to see. So let's say you've got a test that you want to set up and you don't want them to see it yet. This is a reassuring way for you to make sure they can't see it. Or if a student says that they can't access week 2 module, you're like, what do you mean? Come out here and you're like, oh, you're right. So this is where I can test all that stuff. So here I just want to demonstrate this little ScreenPal link from a student perspective. Now they could click and watch this video and then come back out. And you'll see right here, when I have progress tracking turned on, this gives students the ability to indicate that they watched it, or if they didn't, you would be able to see that as well. Gradable items, however, will automatically check. So if they were to take a test or an assignment and they clicked submit, that would automatically check off. Non-gradable items, the students would have to proactively click that they did in fact do that. So if you're going to use progress tracking and you want to confirm that students did in fact go through those items, you have to let them know that they have to click that little radio button to confirm that they did complete it. And as you go through a module, when you're using progress tracking, you can also navigate. Well, this is a bad example because I have ScreenPal first, but you can usually navigate. There's a little arrow in the upper right corner. Let's look at this one, for example. Oh, and it's not available. So this is an example of a good reason to come in under student preview and test. So in this case, you can see it's not available until January 22nd because I had demonstrated how to set those release conditions for you. And so the students can't see this until the first day of classes. But they could, however, come in and look at the faculty contact information if they wanted to. And so that is available. So again, this student preview is a great tool for you. They can go in and see their grades. So in my example, I had used the attendance feature so I could see that they did in fact come. Students would see announcements here. Also, when a student comes into the course, any announcements that you've posted will pop up in their face. It's going to be a big pop-up. So it's really hard for them to miss those pop-up announcements. And when I'm done looking at my course from the student view, I would just click exit. Typically, I would just discard this information because I don't need it. If I wanted to, though, I could go in and submit an assignment, or I could go in and take a test. That way I could save it and go in and just see how it looks in the gradebook. I could use my own account to test out calculations and so forth as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And then if I come back from my instructor mode, I could come into the course and I could look at, let me go in and look at like student progress. So I could see which students have opened it and which students have completed it based on me checking off that progress tracking button. So you can see one student marked it to complete, the others haven't even opened it. So that's just a nice way to grasp, how your students are progressing. And you can always reach out to them using messaging and so forth if you notice that some students might be falling behind. And I think one of the last items I wanted to talk about before we open it up for question and answer is adding a Zoom link to your course, because I know a lot of instructors either teach hybrid or they may want to have a Zoom meeting link for office hours, or perhaps it's January, so maybe there's bad weather and you want to offer that so they can meet remotely instead. So to offer a Zoom link, or add a Zoom link, excuse me, I'm going to click the plus sign and I'm going to go into Content Market. And I'm going to scroll alphabetically to the very end, because Zoom is the end. And you'll see this little circle with a plus sign in the bottom right corner. Because I want to add this to my course content, I want to make sure I click that. And here is my link. Right now it's hidden because I have not created my meeting yet. I have to click right on where it says Zoom. And this is going to bring me into the Zoom tool where I can now build my class meeting. So I'm going to schedule a new meeting, and I'm just going to say snow day class on Zoom, or whatever you wanted to call it. You could put a description if you wanted. You can set specific dates and times if you would like. I typically just check off recurring meeting, and then I change this to no fixed time. And that way what it is it's a single meeting room to use whenever I need it. I would probably uncheck waiting room unless you're going to be using this for office hours, in which case I would leave that on so that nobody could pop in the middle of your discussion with one student until you let them in. But in this case, it's going to be a snow day classroom, so I'm going to leave that unchecked. Want to leave the passcode on. They don't need to know the passcode because they're coming in through Blackboard. It's going to automatically pass through, but it's going to restrict external folks from joining. And then whatever other settings you'd like to have, if you want to have it recorded automatically, you can do so. If you want to mute everybody when they come in, you can choose all those options and then go ahead and click save. And now I'm going to X out. And if I come back in, now they're going to see when they come in, there is a meeting scheduled, and I'm going to have the option to start the meeting because I'm the host. When students come in, they're going to have a button here that just says join, and they're not going to have an option to delete it. And I could change my Zoom link if I wanted so that it was more clear. I'm going to just come out and choose edit. And then maybe use this link to access Zoom. Whatever you think is going to be most intuitive for your students. Obviously make that visible and then click save. So now the students will see this link. There's a little Zoom icon because this is using an LTI tool, and they could then come in, join the class. They wouldn't have to worry about knowing the URL, knowing the passcode and so forth. They just log into Blackboard to access the class.